Hi boys and girls, welcome back to Mr Brakefield Reads. As you now know, we've finished the Twits, which means we're ready for a new book. But before we move on, I thought what I'd do is help you get a bit creative, now that you've read the book, now that you know the characters really well. So I've got a few ideas of what you might do at home to get a bit creative. So, the first thing you could do is you could write a character description. And we'll talk a little bit more about character descriptions soon, because we're going to try and write one together. So you could do a character description of any of the characters in the book, Mr Twit, Mrs Twit. You could do both of those. You could write about the roly-poly bird or Mugglewump, any character you want to. And as I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that very soon. You could also do a setting description where we're still trying to use adjectives to describe, but this time we're not describing characters, we're describing where the characters are. So it could be the Twits' garden, or their house, the monkey cage perhaps, or again a combination of those things. You could do the whole scenes and settings that you find in the book. You could write a book review. So that would be, first of all, to say what happens in the book, just a very short description of what happens in the book, and then you would say what parts you enjoyed, who you'd recommend the book to. You might even give it a star rating. So there's lots of things you could do in a book review. You could also design an alternative front cover. So that's an idea. So you can find the front cover of the book that we've been reading and have a look at that online. There will be other examples of designs of the very same book, so there won't just be one. And you can again Google it, find out which front covers are already out there, and then you can design your own. You can design your own based on your favourite part of the book, a particular character that you liked. It's up to you. But as I said, look at the front cover as it is now, and then think about what you need. You'll need the author's name, you'll need the illustrator's name, of course you're going to need a title, and you're going to need a very bold picture which will attract people. You could draw a picture of your favourite part of the story as well, so you might choose a particular part of the story, one of the chapters, and then try to illustrate that. So you could do that in the style of the illustrator, the original illustrator, who was Quentin Blake, so you could check out his work on Google. You could have a look at the pictures in the book, and if you haven't got the book, then Google Quentin Blake's illustrations from the Twits, because there will be absolutely tons of examples online, I'm sure. And then the other thing is, if you're going to be really adventurous, what you could do is you could actually write another chapter for the book. So you could write a chapter for the end of the book, an alternative ending perhaps, or you could write a chapter for the middle part of the book, maybe another trick that Mr Twit played on Mrs Twit, or vice versa, that Mrs Twit played on Mr Twit. You could think of a particular trick, a devious trick, that either of the two characters could play on the other, and that would be quite interesting as well. So it'd be really, really nice to see you do some of these things, and what I would say is, if you can, when you've done these things, or when you've done some of these things, even if you just choose one, that's fine. Let's see if you can get your mums and dads to send them into school on our email, info@glpa.org.uk, and then I'll hopefully be able to show them on the channel, which would be absolutely fantastic if I can. But I'd love to see them either way. So please, if you do anything, then send it in. It'd be fantastic to see. Okay, well, we're going to move on now, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually write a character description. I'm only going to do the first 2 or 3 sentences, but I'm just going to talk you through what we would do for a character description. So, so a character description, very important that we have the image of the person that we're describing in mind, or the character that we're describing in mind. Now, really lucky, because you have got the book perhaps, or you can actually Google it online and find out what the character looks like, and then describe it from there. And that's what I did with Mr Twit. So I haven't got the book with me actually at the moment, I've left it in another room, but what I would say is, if you've got the picture of Mr Twit, have a look at it now. But I can imagine him, I can remember the illustration that Quentin Blake created. And what I've done is, if I take this first sheet down. And what I've done is I have come up with a collection of words, some words that I think would be really useful to use. So what I'll do is I'll go through them with you, and you can use these words too, of course, so you can think of your own. So Mr Twit is the character that I'm going to describe to begin with, and I thought, okay, what parts of Mr Twit am I going to describe? Because when we're describing a character, we can describe the way they look, we can describe their personality. I thought I would really think about the way he looks, because the way he looks reflects the person that he is, okay? Reflects his personality, tells us something about his personality. So I thought the key things were his beard, his hair, his eyes, and his scowl. Now a scowl is a moody look on somebody's face. You often see it with people who are, as I say, moody or miserable. They have a scowl on their face. I thought the beard, of course, because that's the one thing we notice when we see Mr Twit. He's got this huge beard, and we'll talk about some of the words that I might use to describe that beard. And then also his hair and his eyes are quite interesting looking, let's say. So we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So for the beard, these are the words I chose. I chose dirty, disgusting, long, straggly, prickly, tangled, bristly. For his hair, I chose messy, short, spiky, dishevelled, which means messy, matted, and unkempt. Again, unkempt means messy, not brushed very much, not cared for. Then his eyes, bloodshot. That means really red. I just imagine them that way. Bulging. When you look at the illustration of Mr Twit, it does look like he's got bulging eyes. They're almost popping out of his head. Piercing and protruding. Protruding is just another word for bulging. So coming out of his face, sort of popping out of his head, as I say. And then this scowl that he has. It's a frightful scowl. Fierce, grim, and permanent scowl. Permanent meaning it doesn't change. It's always there. So those are some of the words I've come up with, and you again might come up with many others, and you might describe some of the other parts of Mr Twit that you notice. You might describe a little more about his face, you might describe more about the clothes that he wears, and you might imagine about those things from what you know of the character. Okay, not just looking at the illustrations, but think about the picture that you have in your mind of this character. Anyway, what I'm going to do from there then is I'm going to use some of these ideas. Now I'm not going to use all of them. There's a lot of ideas there, a lot of words there. I'm not going to use all of them, and you'll see that I don't need to use all of them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to write a character description, and you can use this as a basis for your own, or you can rewrite it entirely, or you might even choose a different character as well. So take a note of these words, think about these words, because you might use them, you might use different words to me. You might use some of these words though that I choose not to use in my writing, okay? Because as I say, I'm not going to use them all. These are just some ideas. This is a good activity to do, first of all, before you do your writing. This is like a plan. And as I said, because you're not going to use them all, it's fine, but you've got absolutely tons of ideas there that you can choose from. So, I'm going to get my board now. You might not be able to see me at the moment now, but I've just moved and I'm moving to get my board, my whiteboard. Okay. So, hopefully you can see that. Hopefully it's really clear. Okay, I'm going to start off with, then, using the character's name, because at the beginning it's quite useful to do that in order to introduce the character. So I'm going to start with Mr Twit. Mr Twit. Now, of course, Twit needs a capital letter, and you'll know why. Because, of course, it's a proper noun. It's a name. Okay? Mr would need one anyway, but it happens to be at the start of a sentence too. So it definitely needs a capital letter. Mr Twit. Mr Twit has... Now what I'm thinking is I'm going to describe his beard to begin with, and I'm going to use the word straggly, because I quite like the word straggly. Uneven, straggly means uneven. So all different lengths in different places and very messy. But I think it's important to say that it's quite long as well. So I'm going to say long, straggly beard. So Mr Twit has a long, comma, straggly, beard. Okay. Now I don't want to just leave it there, I'm going to use a conjunction now. So a conjunction is one of those connecting words that connects two parts of a sentence, two clauses. So Mr Twit has a long straggly beard that. Mr Twit has a long straggly beard that is covered. Now I think you probably know what I'm going to say next, because if we think back to the story, it tells us at the beginning about Mr Twit's beard, and it's covered in crumbs and pieces of rotting food. How gross. Full stop there. So Mr Twit has a long straggly beard that is covered in crumbs and pieces of rotting food. Now I think here I might add an adjective. I might say tiny. And tiny pieces of rotting food. Now as you're writing, what you might do is you might decide that actually you want to add something to it. And you can do that quite easily, just as I have. So sometimes you'll, as I say, as you're writing, you'll just think, you know what, I'm going to add something there. I'll just miss something out. But anyway, that's quite useful. So, so Mr Twit has a long straggly beard that is covered in crumbs and tiny pieces of rotting food. Full stop. Now I'm going to move on to his hair. I want to describe his hair. Now his hair, if you remember, it's not long, is it? It's not long. It's quite short. But I imagine it to be quite messy. Mr Twit is not the sort of man that takes care of himself. So like lots of your dads, and hopefully me, but maybe not at the moment, you know, we take care of our hair. We do our hair in the morning, we brush it, we wash it regularly. I don't think Mr Twit does that. Okay. So, I'm going to say his hair, but I'm going to choose some adjectives now to describe his hair. But before I move on, I'll just say that if I started with Mr Twit again, it just becomes quite repetitive. It means it just repeats again and again. I don't want to start every sentence in exactly the same way. So I'm going to try and change the way that I start my sentence. I can start with his. We know who he is. It's Mr Twit. We've already mentioned it. So his short, dishevelled. Now look back at my plan because I know that I've got the spelling of dishevelled and I want to make sure it's right. Dishevelled. So his short, dishevelled. Dishevelled means messy, untidy. So short, dishevelled hair. His short, dishevelled hair. Now I start that way because I want to say something about it. Okay, but I've already described it, so we've already got a picture of what his hair looks like, but I want to say something more about it. That's why I've started in that way. I could have said he has short, dishevelled hair, but it might not leave me the chance to then explain a little more. So I'm going to say his short, dishevelled hair sticks up like. Now, I can imagine that because it's very short, it's quite wiry, what we call wiry, short and thick. So his short, dishevelled hair sticks up like thick wire. And it does that because he doesn't wash it, he doesn't comb it very often at all, and he doesn't take care of it. So that's why. So I'm going to say his short, dishevelled hair sticks up like thick wire because, so again a conjunction, a joining word there, because he never washes or combs it. Full stop. Okay, so we've got two sentences now. Mr Twit has a long, straggly beard that is covered in crumbs and tiny pieces of rotting food. His short, dishevelled hair sticks up like thick wire because he never washes or combs it. So, last thing I'm going to write about is his, you know what, I think I'm going to write about his scowl. I was going to write about his eyes, and I might do that later, but I'm running out of space here, and I want to give you an idea of what a character description looks like. So, I'm going to do 3 sentences. So, I'll finish off with... Now, I want to change the way I start each sentence. I want to really try to do that. Okay, and I've already said Mr Twit, I've already said his. I don't really want to say he at the moment. I'm going to start with a frightful. A frightful scowl. A frightful scowl sits permanently on his, I'm going to say his face, but I think I might describe his face. I think I would describe his face as hideous. His hideous face. I'm going to use another like-a sentence here. I used one here, sticks up like thick wire. I'm going to say it sits permanently on his face, on his hideous face, like an, start again, like an angry storm cloud. Stop. Okay. Now, I can't see my writing, so I hope it hasn't gone off too far into a diagonal direction. Hopefully it's fairly neat. But the main thing is, for you guys, is to get your ideas down. So when you're writing your sentences, yes, you're going to take time and you're going to take care of your handwriting. The main thing is get your writing down. And that can just be a draft then. And then what you can do is you can write it up nice and neatly. You can maybe type it up, which would be quite nice. You can do that on a laptop or on a tablet maybe, or a computer at home. It'd be really good to do. And then you could even add some pictures to it as well. So that would be quite interesting. So that's my start. It's not the end, and what I'll do is I will finish it off and I will put a copy of it on the channel as well. So underneath in the description I'll put a copy of what my character description looks like. But that's a start. So, I'll read it one more time. Mr Twit has a long, straggly beard that is covered in crumbs and tiny pieces of rotting food. His short, dishevelled hair sticks up like thick wire because he never washes or combs it. A frightful scowl sits permanently on his hideous face like an angry storm cloud. Right. So, what I'll do is, in the description below the video, what I'll do is I will put a list of the things that you might choose to do. I'll put this completed version of my character description of Mr Twit, and then if you guys do anything at home and are very proud of it, which I'm sure you will be, send it in to school. Get your mums and dads to send it into school, and then I will be able to see it. But in the meantime, have fun getting creative. You can get some paints out, that'd be a good idea. Although mums and dads might think that's a bit messy, but you know what, it'd be a really good idea to get some paints out to do this, to do some illustrations perhaps. But anyway, have fun doing it, have fun getting creative, and I look forward to seeing some of your fantastic work. But for now, I will see you on, when will I see you again? Probably on Sunday now, but maybe a little bit before that, so just make sure that you keep tuned in to Mr Brakefield Reads to see what videos I've added, because I'm going to try and add videos as much as I possibly can. Alright. Thanks for your support, and I will see you very soon. Bye! Ooh, 20 minutes.